Before we get to your scheduled video, please remember that likes and comments tell YouTube to promote our work to other people, and subscribing to the channel tells you when something new drops. You can also head to the link tree in the description to peruse my books, join us on Discord, or support us on Patreon. You can get episodes of Journey of Wrestling and Violent Profiles early, as well as a load of other treats. Even just $1 a month earns you a name drop for being cool. Thanks for listening, and enjoy the show. Greetings and salutations, fellow affectionate stuffed bears. It is I, Eric J. Chucky, joined as always by an exceptionally enthusiastic The Boy.
Hey!
I don't know if you could have sounded more like the Kel Mitchell to my long-suffering Kenan Thompson if you'd tried.
Who loves orange soda?
Not allowed to drink it anymore. This is Two Nerds Podcast. Today we are saying farewell to Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition in more ways than one. A new version of D&D is coming out later this year in just a few months, and also we're both more or less done with 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. Never say never in the world of professional wrestling, but
It's one of those things where my friend White Raven here is working on a game system that I like better than 5e, and he's the one making it, so he, of course, likes it better than 5e. If you're on the Patreon, you'll see posts about that.
I want to say it's at the $10 tier.
But before we get, and you know, we're looking to move on and other stuff. But before we get too deep into it, we should talk about who's cool.
Caught me mid-drink. That'd be Rob, guy from Ohio, Passion Killer, 7-Eleven, Destrucity, KTL, Harmony. That's it.
That's it now. I just wanted to make sure we caught that.
Yeah, you could be cool for the price of $1 a month. That's like 2 Starbucks a year.
It's really not much.
Yeah, you know how they used to do those commercials in the 90s? Maybe they do them now too. I don't know. I don't have cable. And everything I have commercials are mutilated from. But they would have the starving African children. And
Are you comparing yourself to a starving African child?
in that we make about the same amount of money. And you, for pennies a day, could support this artist, podcaster, game player, possum.
So, I think in our saying goodbye to 5e, it bears, mentioning that we both referred to this pretty much the whole time as D&D Good Edition.
It's kind of funny. Like, I have surprisingly strong memories of memories. It's like a membrane, but that makes me remember of my 5th edition career. There's some fuzzy patches in 4th and 3rd, but 5th is pretty strong. And looking back, I can really see what brought me to making my own fantasy role-playing game in a similar vein. A lot of folks are doing fantasy role-playing games since, the whole Pinkerton incident, and that was indeed my catalyst.
Oh yeah, it was the same for us as it was for other people you may have seen covering D&D content online, much more famous than us. D&D called the Pinkertons on people, so we don't want to play their game anymore.
Well,
you were uncool. I don't want to play with you.
Wizards of the Coast called the Pinkertons.
Yes, it was specifically the overall the company, not the specific D&D design team. They've made some goofy decisions with the new version of D&D, but they, I'm pretty sure, weren't the people who hired the Pinkertons.
And, for all that fervor, we're definitely still playing Baldur's Gate 3, and the next D&D movie sounds interesting, but...
And we still have an active 5e game going, because it hasn't wrapped up yet.
Yeah. But it is kind of funny to look back and see, especially in doing research for this podcast, as the complaints mounted about things that frustrated me, small things, ultimately, but as they grew over the years, they definitely became a lot of the foundational ideas behind Wizards and Whites. This isn't supposed to be like a backdoor ad for the game. It's not really available. You can play test it. Most of the rules are on the Patreon, but it's just sort of what brought us here, as well as it being our 10th anniversary.
And we've spent a lot of those 10 years covering D&D, and a lot of them covering 5e in one way or another.
We did a year, the year of D&D, we called it. It lasted longer than that, where we talked about the D&D races. And I think we spent ultimately more time doing that, but nowadays a refresher on those ideas was best expressed in the form of a tier list, I believe, last year. Whereas classes are a little different and deserve a little bit more talking and a little bit more consideration than just slotting them into rainbow-colored letters. So let's begin where we began, in alphabetical order, sort of, with the Barbarian. At the time, you and I both thought it was a very good class.
And that opinion has not much changed for me. I think Barbarian in 5e is pretty well designed.
I do too. For me as a player, I don't think it's got enough levers to pull. I played a Barbarian for a one-shot.
And you, even in that one shot, grew frustrated with how few levers you had to pull.
Yeah, I just like to be able to do more than one thing. I actually played a Storm Herald, which is amusing because I was very dedicated to trying an Ancestral Guardian. I had helped somebody play one, and I was excited to get, I actually started playing one, but never really got off the ground. And I was thrilled to be able to tank in D&D, like with actual peel and stuff. But no, I went with, despite my frustrations with fire magic, I went with a Storm Totem, Storm Herald, whatever they're called, Barbarian, and did some fire stuff. I was a dwarf, an athlete, and a dunderhead. You said your favorite was the Bear Totem.
It is still my favorite. It is the best version of Barbarian.
And I don't think you've played a Barbarian since.
I played a Zealot.
Did you?
Yeah. The Winter Soldier.
No, that was before.
Was it before?
Yep, we talked about it during the podcast.
Oh.
It was actually half of the art for Barbarian.
Nice. Then yeah, no. I don't think I haven't played a Barbarian since because I played the best version. Why branch out?
Ironically, you are playing a Barbarian in Wizards and Whites, a Berserker. But it has nothing to do with your idea for your next Barbarian, which was a Zealot, very Deus Vult style, Holy Crusader, but with rage, though. Is that something you're still interested in?
I've played enough, especially with the long-running Wizards and Whites playtest Berserker I've been playing, that I've had my fill of that archetype for now.
Yeah.
But it's definitely something that, has a draw. I probably will play some similar type of thing in the future.
Just not as a Barbarian, necessarily.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I don't think our opinions have changed much. Originally, I was like, oh, we could catch up and talk about all the subclasses, but I'm not going to do that because that podcast is going to be long enough as it is. If you want us to, hey, let us know in the comments. Or even better yet, subscribe to the Patreon at the $15 tier where you can make us podcast about something within reason. Moving on to bards. We both said we liked bards, but also said they were a little underwhelming. You were pretty harsh on them on the podcast, but kind of convinced yourself that they were cool over the course of our podcast.
Yeah, I really, I gaslit myself into thinking bards were good. I don't know that they're not. That's just what happened. But...
So you're saying I'm underpowered right now in your current campaign?
Maybe a little, yeah.
Yeah, a little underpowered.
I've buoyed up with various magic items and stuff.
Think I should be able to deal more damage, or?
Sure.
Oh, okay.
He's doing a thing where he expects me to go, no, you're plenty powerful enough, but no, I'm good.
I don't know if he's telling the truth or just fucking with me, so let's move right along.
I still have never played one.
No, you never did get around to that.
I've never played a bard.
So this is actually probably more of a facet of how our campaigns changed. We went from being people who switched campaigns up every couple of months, depending on what we were doing, maybe even more frequently, maybe slightly less, to we've been running the same D&D campaign for over a year now.
Yeah, We're grown-ups is essentially the long and short of that. We only have so much time to play D&D, so we only end up playing a given D&D campaign every other week, which stretches the amount of time it takes to do that.
We've also gotten a rhythm going and reliable
Groups, so that
yeah.
we can play every week just with different groups.
And you and I switch because we have 2 different groups that we play with, and I pivoted pretty quick to the Wizards and Whites one, all things considered, whereas you still had plenty to do in yours, so we didn't switch houses, we just switched, I just switched my campaign and you kept yours running. So maybe in the future there will be more back and forth, I don't know. But that has caused us to play fewer characters, period.
Overall, yeah. In the last couple of years at least.
Yeah. So we never got around to that, Barge. You were thinking about playing a satire, which was your favorite at the time. You wanted to play pure dickbag jester.
Yeah, and you may know, in Wizards and Whites, I was recently overlooking a dickbag jester archetype for a certain type of wizard, or maybe an expert. It's still a draw. It's still something I wish to play.
Yeah.
But I just never got around to a bard. It's not necessarily out of any antipathy towards bards. It's just I had other shit I wanted to play more.
And fewer opportunities in those years to play it. My favorite at the time was Eloquence. I still like it. I don't know. I could be convinced of something else. It's not what I'm playing right now. I did not actually commit to playing something next time. I deflected. I'm going to pronounce things weird today, I guess. I've been in the editing hole. It is what it is.
He listened to all of our previous D&D podcasts all at once in a row.
On 1.5 speed, at least. Don't do that to our show. Like, first of all, when you come back to regular speed, we sound like we're drunk. Secondly, our laughter, our regular normal people laughter becomes chipmunk noise. And it does great after a while. I am playing a Lorehold bard right now. That was mostly to preserve some ideas I had as my character switched from druid to bard. More on that later.
Oh yes, lots more on that later.
I feel like a lot has already been said, so I'm probably not going to go deep into it. But if I was playing 5th edition again for some reason, I could see myself playing Eloquence.
I could honestly see you playing a couple more bards if we kept up with 5th edition.
Bard is one of my 2 favorite classes, and I say 2 because while I like the 3rd one, there's only one subclass I like from that 3rd one.
That is a problem.
Yes. So, an amusing note, I mentioned in the Bard podcast, I don't want to play a fucking fairy. In relation to the Glamour Bard, I think. Since then, I have played 2 characters that are violently and intrinsically tied to fairies. And the funny thing is, I'm not any more fond of them than I was when we started.
All this work as a DM and it hasn't done anything.
Like, I mean, it's neat and everything, but I'm not...
I'm laughing like it was a plan. It wasn't. It was a pure coincidence.
Yeah.
But God, it would have been funny if it was a plan.
Extra funny that you failed.
Yeah, it would make it funnier.
That happened some other time. I don't remember, so it's pointless to bring this up. I'm sorry, listener. But there was something like that recently where someone, I think you, said to me, you must like that a lot. You keep doing that. And I'm like, oh no, I actually kind of hate it. But I am doing it for whatever. It's just the most convenient or reasonable thing to do at the time. And there's my bad story. Let's move on to Cleric. Your thoughts on Cleric at the time. They're great, and you wanted to play one soon. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I never really got around to that. Didn't end up playing a lot more D&D characters after that.
No. I don't know that you did any, other than the one-shot.
Playing D&D characters? Given when that podcast would have happened... No, I don't know that I did. Maybe a fighter?
I think the fighter happened over the course of us doing these podcasts, but that was the last
I believe
D&D
that's
character.
what I was playing Yulon when we were doing these podcasts, right? Mm-hmm. So that would have been... Yeah. No, I just didn't.
I felt at the time that Turn Undead is a core feature being kind of weird, just because it ties up a lot of power budget. I still feel that way. I hate being cynical, but it sounds very much like a bunch of people around a table went, okay, so what is the core fantasy of Cleric, right? Turning undead, right? And a bunch of yes men agreed, and that's why they went with that.
Well, for a lot of people who play clerics, yeah, it is. It's
I don't like them.
being the holy the priest who abjures the abomination.
I would have liked to see more. You can also turn X, Y, and Z. You know, they did a little bit of that with the Arcane Cleric, but not with anything else. That's strange.
I feel honestly, I may have said this at the time, it's a holdover from earlier editions of D&D, like Fireball or Lightning Bolt. Clerics turn undead.
Yeah. Oh, and I don't think there's anything wrong with clerics turning undead, but like that being the central pillar is just a little weird, I guess. I don't know.
It's also the weakest version of that in any edition.
It is. I don't know why. I had a bunch of favorite domains: Beauty, Arcana, Life, Grave, Solidarity, and Twilight. I was thinking about playing Solidarity next. I haven't played a cleric since. Clerics are up there as one of my favorite classes. If it weren't for the turn undead thing, I would be more fond of them. It's just a weird feature that you have and you have to have, and your power budget is tied into it. But it's not the biggest sin in the world, and when it is handy, it is handy.
Wow, that's a really... I was going to say more, but that's a really good segue. Let's talk about the next class.
Man, let's finish talking about you real quick here.
It's such a good segue.
Yeah, thanks. You had no favorite. They were all pretty good, and we talked about Destruction just to talk about a cleric you might play, but it just never happened.
I really love healers. I love healers in all forms of tabletop and most multiplayer video games. It is great. It is great to be the guy who heals people. I love doing that. I know that in popular culture, in gamer culture, being reduced to the quote-unquote Band-Aid box makes people feel bad. Not me. I am stuck on Band-Aid brand. Band-Aid stuck on me. Let's go.
I've mostly been playing healers since this podcast,
but not clerics.
No, I was in the middle of playing a cleric, or just after it, and I haven't had the occasion to go back. But it started, amusingly, as whether you intended to or not, you challenging me and suggesting that I didn't like playing support characters at all. And I was very much, but no, and I will prove it by doing so. And I meant to do that for like one character, and then I just, but for a brief foray into the most insane, damaging character I've ever played. It's just pretty much stuck with healing, tank support kind of stuff since. Mostly because I know the rest of the party won't. Two. There was another game there we played. So yes, we'll finally get into the Druid now. If you watched any of our Year of D&D podcasts, you heard me bitch about two things, Druids and Half-Elves. Well, and us bitch about Wild Magic Sorcerer.
It's just bad. But Druid, you had an experience. You played a Druid for a long time. You gave Druid the most fair shot that you possibly could. You have played 100% more Druids than I ever have.
I think I've played more Druid, even given like play time, like time spent playing. I think I've played a Druid more than any other class in 5th edition.
You gave it the fairest shot I have ever seen someone give a class that they didn't like upon first reading it, and you just kept going back.
You had to basically force me to stop playing.
Yes,
Druid.
Basically, yeah. Because you hated every session and you weren't having a good time, and I basically had to look you in the eye and go, change your class or I'm doing it.
I pivoted to Bard. I was very happy. Now, you'd think I'd like Druid because they do have a lot of levers to pull, but their levers are mutually exclusive in most scenarios, and that drives me nuts. And you have to be very min-maxy. You have to want to be min-maxy to actually get the most out of your wild shape. Because there are some great wild shapes in the book that can do some really nasty things, but if you don't have that encyclopedic knowledge, or you don't have the stats to support certain spell combos, which I did, then you're not going to be doing the kind of insane stuff that the internet talks about doing. But the new thing, yeah, we've covered all this already. I don't really feel like the need to go into it. It's still not any better than it was before. The new thing is I didn't realize that they have basically no single target damage options.
They've got a couple, but like nothing that really stands out.
No. I mean, Wild Shape, I suppose, is their single target damage option.
Yeah.
And they just don't have as much nature magic as the nature mage probably should. They have a lot, but like there's not the same kind of flexibility, especially at lower levels. Look, at high levels, there's all kinds of crazy spells, but nobody ever gets there.
Not even Larian Studios were arrogant enough to make their game go to level 20, because that's just not a thing that actually happens in D&D campaigns.
Well, and, I mean, you get to the point where magic is just pretty broken when you're applying gamer logic to it. Dispel magic isn't a spell in Baldur's Gate 3, and that's because you would just go around turning off facets of the environment.
Yep.
So,
I would. I'm not even going to pretend like I wouldn't. I would absolutely do that.
Yeah, it's... Every little thing about the Druid is frustrating. It seems good on paper, and there are some people who vibe with it, and more power to you. It's not for me. With the exception of the Twilight Druid, I have had fun playing that one, and if I ever had to play a Druid again, for whatever reason, I would pick a Twilight Druid. They have a very good option for using their Wild Shape that isn't Wild Shape.
That isn't exclusive and has basically none of the downsides of Wild Shape. They just get a better Wild Shape.
In that they can, get buffs to their allies and healing and all kinds of good stuff. An amusing note of something I said while during that podcast was a frustration. Let me be an owlbear. Why can't druids be owlbears?
And then the D&D movie happened.
Yeah, here we are. Your favorite druid was Land.
Just all the summons. It's fun.
You also assessed that as being the most powerful class, but not your favorite.
Druid, yeah. If played right, like you said, if you have the min-max in your soul, you can snap the game over your knee with a druid in 5e.
But you said next time you might want to play either a Land Nature Guardian style with all your extra spells, or a semi-feral Wildman Moon Druid.
That would have been fun.
Another amusing note, this pertains to Wizards and Whites, you said you would fix Druid by making Wild Shape a separate class.
Because, it's a great, cool, awesome idea, but it's... You run into the situation where you have people like White Raven who really want to play Nature Mage, but really don't want to turn into a horse.
And I tried. I turned into that horse.
You turned into so many horses.
I turned into a stinky cow.
At one point, you turned into a walrus and crushed a guy. You did it.
I tried.
You tried.
I tried, man. Let's roll along to Fighter. Ironically, as bland and boring as it is, as a long-running joke with us was, oh, you want to play something interesting? Human Fighter, lol. I've played more fighters in my D&D career than anything else. And they are one of the strongest classes and the most sturdy, reliable in 5th edition.
It's just all right, so it's D&D is a sword and sorcery game, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there are a lot of different kinds of sorcery. But for sword, there really is a best game in town.
Yeah. And it's Paladin. But Fighter's pretty good, too. There's nothing much to say beyond what we said last time. I don't think our opinions have changed much. You have played a Fighter since, I believe, this podcast, even though we were still talking when you were playing Yulon. I have played another fighter since this podcast. I said Eldritch Knight was my favorite. I don't know about that now. And next time I might want to play a Warlord, a Banneret, or Purple Dragon Knight, a Brute, or a Cavalier. Ironically, I ended up playing the class I was talking the most shit about, the Monster Hunter, and I had a really good time with it. I played him as sort of a pseudo-paladin, and that was pretty fun. You discussed liking the Samurai and Arcane Archer, and you wanted to play any of those as Hellboy or Oghren from Dragon Age, the Cavalier. Mostly because you would be swearing and drunk and throwing things at people that didn't do anything to deserve it.
Yeah. Fun times.
You played nothing resembling that.
No, what fighter are you talking about?
Walden.
I didn't play Walden, bud.
No, I played Walden.
You
no, you played Yulon.
Yeah, but that was during this podcast.
Not this one specifically. This took over a year and a half. Our campaign changed a lot over that year and a half.
No, I played an Echo Knight because... I mean, if I'm being real, because Sharpshooter and Great Weapon Master are the best things in 5e, and once I bit into those and got a hold, I tried to work them into every character I played in one way or another, because it's just the way you do the best. It's just the way you do the best. It's the way you win. And I wanted to be better than that. I did. I wanted to not be the guy who's like, you gotta win D&D. But like every time I made a character, I was like, well, while I'm here...
Your mileage may vary depending on your roles.
If you get the... What I mean, so like with standard point array, it can be bad.
Yeah.
But with a decent rolling for dice or a decent point buy and some work in character creation, you really don't end up missing that much more than usual.
No. It's pretty solid.
But anyway, Fighter. I think Fighter's really fun. I think my favorites were, Samurai and Arcane Archer?
Yeah.
They're just really flavorful.
Reasons. Yeah. You get everything that's good about Hawkeye and everything that's good about a Samurai.
Yeah, they just did a good job making those.
Monk is the next one. I still have only played a Monk for 1, maybe 2 sessions. You, I think 3.
In 5e?
Yeah.
I don't...
Quicksilver.
Yeah, he was technically a monk. He was fast. I made him to go fast. What he was completely immaterial. I made him to go fast. I see, the thing is, I didn't really have a desire to play much monk because I played a lot of monk in 3rd edition.
Yes.
So that bar's pretty full up.
I feel that. And that's another reason why I never went back to Cleric, because I played a lot of Cleric. I said they were strong, but niche and not as damage-focused as you might think. You said the same, but doubled down on them being niche. We've both played with more monks now, and I think the thing that's become the most clear is that if you want your monk to be about dealing damage, you want to increase your flat damage. Monks get so many attacks.
Finding some way to increase the flat damage you do is the best way you can increase your overall damage, because your damage dice are actually going to be pretty bad until mid-game.
But if you land all 3 to 4 hits at early levels, and you have even just a +4 in your attribute...
Yeah, with just anything better than standard point array.
Yeah, you're nailing at least, 15 damage. That's nothing to sneeze at early levels. At the time I said my favorites were Astral Self and Soul Knife. They're still fine. I said I wanted to play an Astral Self Noob Cybot. Amusingly, I asked you during this podcast, can you multi-class within one class? Take multiple subclasses of Monk? And no, you can't, which you knew and said at the time. How frustrating. Be cool if you could.
Would be cool if you could.
Your favorite was Drunken Master, and you wanted to play a Drunken Master badass comedy asshole. I believe you once again, despite the time between these 2 podcasts, brought up Oghren from Dragon Age. You were really in the mood to just...
I just wanted to be drunk and a problem.
Yeah, you really did.
So there was a period in my life. It is no longer the case. Wonderfully, beautifully, magnificently. But there was a period in my life when I was the forever DM. and it imbued upon me a desire to be like the DM's little helper when I did get to play, to be like constructive and helpful and trying to move things along. And I just, sometimes you just want to watch the world burn. Sometimes you just want to be drunk in a fucking problem.
Amusingly, I remember you did play another D&D character after this podcast, but it was a homebrew class.
Oh yeah, wrong.
Yeah, and he couldn't have been more different from everything you suggested here.
Well, that's just because he was 3 Green Arthur Morgan from Red Dead Redemption 2.
And I think you playing Red Dead Redemption 2 between this podcast and you know...
And
now,
some other life changes, shall we say.
No one cares that you're vegan now, okay?
Hey.
Stop trying to bring it up on the podcast.
Don't you put that shit on me. That is not true. That is lies.
I watched him eat a whole dead pig just this morning.
That's right. Victory.
On to my other favorite D&D class, the Paladin. It is Bard and Paladin are my two favorites. They have a, a lot of options, a lot of things you can do. Not all of them are always useful, but it's nice to have them, period. I mentioned here, this is a Wizards and Whites thing more so, but if I were designing a game, I would have a spell like Disintegrate deal half damage on a save. In general, I wouldn't make save or suck spells all or nothing. Just, I'm saying interesting things to drive you toward my product, but, like, don't feel too bad about it. My favorites are the Ancients or the Crown, and the next time I wanted to play Ancients or an Oathbreaker who was cooperative with his team, for whatever reason. I did end up playing a Crown Paladin. The Paladin I had played previously switched his subclass because of some developmental stuff that happened to him. You thought the Oaths were pretty underwhelming, but the core of the class is pretty good.
Paladin is the class with such an amazing chassis that the Oath just is kind of whatever little hood ornament you want is. But I love Paladins. I love Paladins structurally and from a storytelling standpoint. I don't know that I'd play a good one. I don't know that I would be good at playing a Paladin.
Well, and in 5th edition, Paladins aren't psychologically the same as they used to be.
No, and that's true. That's true. But, like, that's what I like about them, so that's what I would be.
And that's fair. Amusingly, I don't really have much argument with all the stuff that Paladin gets. I like that they moved the horse to a spell.
That is nice.
But otherwise, the stuff that they've had from 2nd edition onward all makes sense to me, and I think is core part of the fantasy, unlike necessarily Turn Undead for the Cleric. But, hey, that's me. You said your favorite was Treachery, and next time you played one, you would want to play either Vengeance, Treachery, or a Michael Carpenter-style Redemption.
I have played no Paladins.
You played... Wow, was that at that point? You played one for 1 or 2 sessions.
Yeah, but it was a much more lighter tone game, so I went with something more comedy.
Yeah, we didn't get too far into it. You were a Paladin of the Iron Church. I can't remember what the actual subclass is.
He was whichever one it is that's real simple and lets you crit on larger radiuses, like just like athletics or champion or whatever. It's a champion's a fighter thing, but whatever the Paladin equivalent of that is.
Yeah, it was the one in the Greek book.
Yeah.
Ranger. Basically, the good class, revised Ranger is better, but there's nothing really wrong with core Ranger. Were my thoughts. You echoed those same thoughts. And it had an interesting catch, that you don't think of them as melee.
Yeah, I don't. To me, a Ranger's a guy with a bow. Even though, Strider. But I don't know. My brain just doesn't think of them that way. My brain never thinks of the 2 melee swords Ranger. And notably, when I did play a Ranger after these podcasts, I played a guy with a bow.
Yep, that was a one-shot.
Yep.
You said you might do a Monster Slayer in the style of The Witcher, and that was your favorite one. I don't think that's what you ended up doing for the one-shot.
I know. I knew it was a one-shot going in, so I built something specifically tailored for the heist we were doing in a one-shot.
I didn't, because as we said, I don't really min-max. I can, I just don't. What I do is I min-min, and that's where I try really hard to make sure my minimum rolls don't suck that bad. My favorite was the Swarmkeeper, and I still think it's pretty cool. I wanted to use maybe rats or butterflies or something. I haven't played a ranger since then. I think ranger is good, but I really like to mix it with rogue.
It is two. That is peanut butter and chocolate. Those two just fit together real well.
They do. You get to make up for a lot of rogues' weaknesses with your ranger abilities, and you get to make up for rangers' lack of damage throughput, unless you're specializing in certain things, with support from sneak attack, which bridges us nicely into rogue. Both of us thought they were a bit swingy. You had a worse opinion of them before you DM'd them, and you mentioned that on the old podcast.
Yeah, basically, on paper, they don't look very good because it's so easy to do nothing. But in practice, they end up working out fine.
I have to say, I've never really been interested in playing one. I don't think, other than my cross-class ranger rogue, and I thought of her as more of a ranger. I believe I mentioned it on that podcast. I didn't really... I haven't wanted to play one. I think there's a lot with the subclasses that really sucks. There's a couple of good ones. I mentioned I liked Revived, and I might want to play Mastermind or Scout. But they just don't feel very strong in moment to moment until I started playing Baldur's Gate 3. And I think the way Baldur's Gate 3 expresses a ranger, I think actually getting to see your big hits and all the sparks and all that happen when you deal damage and the sound effects really pulls off the same thing the rogue is always doing. They don't even have the aim action, and makes it feel really good.
I mean, yeah, visual feedback is very powerful.
Yeah. It's and I think that will translate. In the future when I play a 5th edition game, I don't fucking know. It might happen, might not. Who cares? You said Soul Knife was your favorite.
Still is. I think it's a really cool concept and a great way to allow for you to play a lot of different kinds of people with that chassis, as opposed to just Delvin Mallory from the Thieves Guild.
You have the same problem with rogues that I do with monks.
Yeah, honestly, yes. You can't think of monk as anything except Aang from Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Even that.
It has
Wind
to
power
be
is ridiculous.
a bald monk.
Yeah.
Like Kane from like David Carradine is the only monk that's ever existed. Like you can only think of it as a bald shaved, orange robed kung fu man. Despite all of the various other things it could be.
It's like on Friends when Phoebe tries to teach Joey French. I mean, you have walked me through this. And you were like, look, you can do a monk this way, you can do a monk this way. And I was like, oh, yeah, you could do a monk this way. Exactly. So if you're going to play a monk, what are they going to be? Bald Kung Fu Man.
It really almost was exactly that. And for me, Soul Knife is one of the ways that lets me think of Rogue and not think of Delvin Mallory from the Thieves Guild.
I mean...
Devlin. I can never remember which one it is.
The Itcha, but not as funny.
Yeah.
Next time you said you might play an Inquisitive, it's a small party, or a Scout in a big party. Mostly you just wanted to shoot things with a bow. And at least you did manage to fulfill that fantasy a couple of times.
Yep, it was a ranger. Or a gun.
Yeah, or a gun.
But I like bow guy.
Sorcerer.
Sorcerer is really fun, and it is the thing I have objectively played the most of in 5e.
The single thing, yeah.
Yeah. Wild Magic Sorcerer is bad.
I'm not going to go into it again because we spent 15 minutes straight talking about it, and then a lot of time after that talking about how we spent 15 minutes talking about it. And it just from foundational... Why would you do that, designers of the game? Why would you build something so bad? And then that's one of your first of two options.
The later Sorcerer subclasses, much better.
They all have one weird thing.
It's like that was, that was their remit. That was the hook. That was the idea, was each one of them must have one weird fucking thing they get.
I said the next time I wanted to play Stone, and that Stone, Giant, and Shadow were my favorites. I originally started trying to build my current character as a Stone Sorcerer. I had the stats for it, because it does require monk-level stats. We rolled, and I rolled the best stats I've ever rolled, and immediately wasted them on the Druid, like the meme. But the more I was looking into what the character could do, and the more I see why the class never made it to like actual publication and was just a Unearthed Arcana thing, because it was flawed. It was being pulled in too many different directions. You couldn't really accomplish proper tanking. You couldn't really accomplish proper big damage. You were definitely jack of all trades, master of none.
So instead, you decided to play a druid.
Yes, and I hated that. But now I'm a bard. And things happen where I get hit for 50 damage and the rest of the table is sucking their teeth because they know I'm a bard. And I'm like, no, it's fine. My constitution is absurd. You really loved the Stone and the Pyromancer. Said next time you might play a Pyromancer or a Dragon Soul Dragonborn, because the synergy is just too on brand.
Related, I haven't played one, but I believe Baldur's Gate doesn't actually have Wild Magic Sorcerer in it. It has Dragon and Storm.
No, it does have wild magic.
It does?
Yep.
Huh.
It added Storm because otherwise it would only have 2 subclasses. Yeah, wild magic is the same there as it is anywhere else. Like, you could be winning a fight.
Weirdly,
and then,
that would be more fun in a video game.
I thought that, but like, I don't want to be in a position where I'm doing well in a fight and then suddenly I am behind enemy lines because one of my spells decided to switch the enemy and I.
I don't think I would be interested to try it, because in video games I can reload saves.
Well, sure.
Oh, that went real fucking bad. No, we're trying that again.
I get tired of that shit. I haven't played a sorcerer. I did briefly a wild magic one for about 3 sessions, about the same as your monk, because they were the same party.
Yep.
They're fine. I'm not that high on meta magic. I'm playing a sorcerer in my second Baldur's Gate playthrough. But they're fine. I'd rather be a wizard at the end of the day. Which is weird. Don't tell high school me that.
Oh man, I knew a younger you, and I can feel younger me's smug radiating out. He wishes he could tell younger you that you just said that, and I'm living for it. Hold on, I'm just gonna take that in.
Yeah, because you've got about 1 class before we reverse it.
Yeah, listen here.
So Warlock.
I
think Warlock has been the most contentious class the entire time we've been playing this game. When we were discussing it on the original podcast, we talked about how you basically have to make a concession for a Warlock being in your party because it plays so differently. It's not a bad class, but like the short rest mechanic is almost never used.
Except for Warlock and Fighter.
Well, and there's like a couple of other things that get stuff back on a short rest. But
Warlock and Fighter are the ones who really hammer into it.
Fighter can exist for a lot longer without it. A lot of Fighter's features, they come back on a short rest. That's nice. I am still getting a bunch of attacks, and I do a bunch of physical damage.
Basically, the way you make a version of Warlock that can hang for a longer period of time is you play one of 2 Warlocks. You play a Warlock that uses Eldritch Blast, and his spells are utility. He uses Eldritch Blast. He's an Eldritch Blast machine. Or you play a Warlock and she's just a Hexblade. Specifically, a Hexblade, Pact of the Blade, and you're just a fighter.
And again, your spells are either utility or like those are your big guns or whatever. It is nice that the Warlock gets maximized spell slots, but they get 2.
Yeah, it's not much. I think they might get more at some absurd high level that no campaign gets.
They do eventually get to them. We never got into what we wanted to play next time. I mentioned I liked the Noble Genie and the Great Old One. I did for a few sessions play a Noble Genie Warlock. He was fun. You said you wanted to try a Hexblade or a Loth one. I forgot about that. That was a thing. They were very cool. But you played a fighter and a gun guy, so that just didn't happen.
Nope. Only so much time in the world.
I think another part of Warlock is, especially for you, you enjoy the one big fight style of DMing.
Yeah, it's basically what fits the party of players I have the most and the amount of time I have to DM and the amount of time we have in a given session. Given how long fights take at anything approaching mid-game levels in D&D, if you want to do multiple big fights in a day, that would mean effectively I would be DMing the same day for several months.
Which, I mean,
I don't want to do that.
I've done that before, so it depends. And one can get in there multiple encounter, 10 or whatever the insane number is. You can get that in with like small crappy fights that are just meant to pull your resources. But I think you, if you were running a 5th edition game, would have to have a very honest talk with somebody trying to play a warlock and go, look, that's not. You'd have to say, look, and then meow.
Yeah, the cats
as cutely
are here.
as possible.
They want attention. I'm giving the pets.
What would our podcast be like without cats?
A lot less noise.
And a lot less panicked stretches of silence is something you guys can't see is happening that we're hopefully will try to prevent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would, but like, it's basically down to like, I don't, if we had a different dynamic, if we were playing every week or multiple times a week or long sessions, it would be much more reasonable to do short rests and stuff.
Well, the
But
funny thing is,
I don't want to be DMing the same day for like multiple months.
sure, and I don't think that many people out there who are playing, especially post-pandemic, because a lot more people are playing online now, and not just because of that. I think most people have reintegrated with society, but like we realized we could, so now we are. Not us specifically, but we as a people. I think most people do only get together like once a month. Like, I think we're still getting in more game time than your average D&D group. So
How y'all got time for 10 encounters a day? Is your whole fucking year-long campaign the worst fucking day in this dude's life? What's going on? Do other people DM entire D&D campaigns like a Dresden Files novel where it's just the worst weekend in this fucker's year?
I don't know. I've managed to up my encounter time. I've done a lot of experimenting with it. It's fine. I can do it. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I don't. That's another tool in my toolbox. How much power do I want my players to have going into whatever given encounter is meant to be the big climax? We round off the podcasts we originally did now with Wizard. I would have called it my favorite years ago, I said at the time. No longer, but it's still solid. You said it was very solid, very cool, and nothing wrong with the subclasses.
I still think that's true.
I liked the lore Blade Singer and Divination Wizards, and next time I would play either lore as a very traditional or bug wizard. Never did play my bug wizard. Instead, I played a muscle wizard who definitely was not Beast from the X-Men.
Definitely not.
And you said your favorites were lore to be a wizard, war, Theurge, Psionic, or Blade Singer otherwise, and your plans were to next play Blade Singer, and by golly, you actually did it.
I did play a Blade Singer. I really liked that character. That campaign fell apart, but I really liked that character.
I liked that character too, actually. She was pretty cool.
Yeah, I think Wizard's good. I'm glad I played at least one in 5th edition. Because when I was younger, man, Wizard was my jam. But, like, it just never got around to it until basically the tail end of it. But I did get at least one. I believe with the various one-shots, I think I may have managed to clap every class in 5e.
You'd never played a druid.
Yeah, you're right. I never played a druid. It was your class. It was the one you played.
For whatever reason. Finally, we never did end up doing a podcast on them, but Artificer, they are the one that would be among my top 3 favorite classes.
And we've both played one for a long period of time.
You for a reasonable amount. It was just a couple of sessions.
I think we played it for like 4 or 5. That's a
maybe,
decent amount for
maybe
a D&D campaign.
I played for a little longer, but I really only like Alchemist.
I love Artillerist. I forget whichever the version I played was.
Oh, I forgot all about your robot dude. I was thinking about your Tony Stark.
No, I was
Your
talking about
Dragonborn.
blues.
Yeah, that was a way different version of Artificer. But yeah. That was like one of the betas before they even announced they were doing Eberron. You played that Artificer.
Yeah.
So he was very different from what the modern version is.
I think Artificer's a really great concept, and I would not mind playing more.
Same, but it would just be an alchemist again.
They're Arcane Paladin, if I'm being honest.
Yeah. And I like the way that like they did take care. You know, we bitch about the Bard spell list being underwhelming, and without adding anything to it, it is a little underwhelming. But you know, depending on your campaign, you're probably just mostly going to be using healing spells anyway, until you get to the levels where your spells are good. And they've released a lot of spells as supplements since then. Bards can do a lot of psychic damage and stuff. That's pretty nice. You get your magical secrets and all that. But it is, you know, it's flavored around those ideas of sound and charm and so on and so forth. I love the way they did Artificer. They have also a very small spell list, but it all is stuff you could reasonably fudge with, like, technology.
They specifically made Artificer spell list and, like, tailored it, and I like that.
Yeah. I don't remember what they are. My favorite is Alchemist, and next time I'll play an Alchemist if there is a next time.
I don't. The version that I've played both versions of Artificer. I like the one who makes armor. I liked the one who made a robot companion. That was cool. I think that was the old version.
Yeah.
I haven't really been big on Alchemist. I've played or DM'd for a bunch of Alchemists. A bunch of Alchemists.
Yeah.
Like, or either playing with, or in Wizards and Whites, or DMing in D&D. A bunch of alchemists have been at the table as me, same table as me, and I've never had the urge to play one.
Well, the Wizards and Whites Alchemist is very different from the Dungeons and Dragons Alchemist.
It is.
Wizards and Whites Alchemist throws exploding grenade bombs, and can make a homunculus. So yeah, that's our recap. It was a long one. We don't have a sign off anymore. We did when we did that podcast.
Oh well.